Hello, lovelies. Welcome to Horror 421, the podcast, with your hosts, special effects makeup artist supreme, Elena Morales, and your friendly small-town horror author, Charles Campbell. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the frights in this week's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Horror 421, the podcast. I'm your host, Charles Campbell, and today we have a very special guest. We have Tony Wash. He is a movie director. He's directed several films. One of my favorite that he's directed is Skeletons in the Closet, but we're going to talk to Tony about his films and what he's directed and what he has out there. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thanks for having me on. Definitely looking forward to chatting.
All right. Well, I've talked to you a little bit before the start of the show, but we want to jump into some of the things that you've done and bring everyone up to speed on what you're working on right now. So one of the things you sent me a link to your first movie, and I turned it on, not really knowing what to expect, but as I watched it, I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the throwback to the 80s slasher monster movies kind of combined. And I love the creep show-esque feel it had with the cartoon panels. It was fantastic. And the name of the movie was It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want to. And Tony, I went ahead and picked up the DVD on Amazon because I had to have it. I will definitely plug where everyone else can get this today.
You should return that. Amazon's got free returns. You should return that copy and buy one from my website, because not only is the compression of that video file terrible, the distributor just absolutely butchered the look of the movie.
Okay.
But
I'll definitely
also
do that.
That doesn't have the Choose Your Own Adventure version. The DVDs that I sell have the Choose Your Own Adventure version on them.
Well, awesome. I'll definitely do that. But I at least wanted to show the image
Yes.
to the folks. But it's a fantastic movie. And you told me that you worked on this while you were attending Tom Savini's special effects school. So tell me a little bit about what it was like making a movie with that guy and what was so special about this movie.
Well, so I was 24 and was kind of working just a normal human being job, and I'd always been telling people and telling myself that I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I had a fraternity brother calling me up one day and was kind of like, we should just go out to Pittsburgh and go to Tom Savini Special Effects School. And I was like, all right, that sounds like a cool idea. Why not? And he ended up not going. And so I ended up still doing it, even though he's the one who kind of talked me into it and didn't go. So I moved out to Pittsburgh by myself for 2 years and kind of started over, and it was a really interesting experience. And there's a lot of really unique people that school, attracts to it because of just, who Savini is and the films that the effects work that he created over the years. And then just the opportunity to be able to learn from some pretty cool instructors and be surrounded by other people who appreciate the horror genre and the artistic side of the horror genre as much as you do. So, the school, for all intents and purposes, the school, you get out of it what you put into it. There were some people who went there who were really good already at sculpting and makeup application and stuff. And so they excelled, and, they've worked on huge things at this point. And then there's other people that all they did was just basically party the whole time. And so, I think I was a little bit in the middle. I don't think that I have some artistic talent in terms of sculpting and things like that. But, overall, I don't think that I didn't gravitate as much to special effects as I had hoped I would have. I think I just get a little bored in the process of creating something. It takes too long to get it on camera. And so I started while I was there. I was like, what, why don't I try and dip into what I've always said I wanted to do, and that's direct and write. And so I started working on a script because a guy that I was going to school with was renting a abandoned funeral home that was up on top of the hill in the town of Monessen, Pennsylvania, where this school is. And So it was pretty cool to have this awesome location of this abandoned funeral home. And it was basically a condemned building. And he was living in like one room where he had like a space heater and there was barely any power in the house and no running water. So, we
Oh
had to
wow.
drive our actresses down the street to use the bathroom and stuff. It was a real pain in the ass. But being 24 years old and not really understanding how to set up a production so that people are comfortable and all that stuff, it was a learning experience and it was a tremendous one at that. And
Well, how was it working with Tom? He had he had a nice little role in this movie. He was in there for a while. How was it working with him? I'm a big Tom fan, so I'm just curious.
yeah, so it was so we shot the movie pretty much in the like winter and spring of early 2006 is mostly when we were shooting the film, and that was my fourth semester going there. And Tom Savini doesn't really teach at the school. He'll show up, once or twice a semester and walk around, and maybe he'll bring Fluffy with him from Creepshow or something, and,
Right.
and he'll flirt with all the girls and talk bullshit with everybody. So it's cool, but it's like he doesn't actually sit there and say, this is what you should do and this is how you do it. And so that was a little disheartening when you kind of realize the dynamic of how the school is. So I do have a hard time recommending the school to people as
Gotcha.
much as I'm sure they would want us to recommend it to new students. But so we shot the majority of the film in early 2006, and then I moved back to Chicago when I graduated in spring of 2006. I edited the film and then started showing it to a couple of people that I knew, a couple other directors, and they're like, this is cool, but you've got like a 65-minute movie, so it's too long for a short, too short for a feature. You need to add some more violence in it. You should add some more nudity in it because this is back before
Oh
politics and
yeah,
everything got
yeah,
involved
yeah.
with movies. And so it was like, all right, well, if I'm going to make this like a traditional 80s horror movie, I need violence, I need nudity. And
Th-
I need to try and get a named actor.
Those are
So,
the boxes you have to check for an '80s
right,
horror movie.
right.
Yeah,
And I mean,
exactly.
growing up, that's the stuff I enjoyed in a horror movie. So, it's the idea that you're watching things that you're really not supposed to be watching. And so I wanted this movie to have that because I thought if this is going to be my calling card, I need it to stand out amongst all the other movies out there, which is why I didn't just do a short film because everybody makes a short film when they're starting out. Um, and so I thought coupling this feature with this choose your own adventure idea, I thought, okay, this is going to do something for me and get me out there with the audiences that I need to tap into. And so in 2007, I went back to Pittsburgh 2 different times for a week at a time, and we shot some additional stuff. The first time I went out, we shot all the opening where Mr. Burkett kills his whole family. And then the second time I went out there is when we got all the creep show deaths at the end of the movie where Mr. Burkett comes back as a zombie and is killing all the party goers. And we shot all the Tom Savini stuff with him and the girl Alicia Kenny in the basement
Right.
of the house, setting up the Carrie kind of gag with the bucket of blood. And so, it was cool working with Tom. That experience of that week of shooting where we did all those cool death scenes and stuff, I had brought in the majority of the film I shot myself, and then on that last week, I brought in my friend Mitch Martinez, who's a cinematographer out of Philadelphia, and he did such an amazing job of taking the camera that I had used, the Canon XL2, I believe it was, for shooting the movie, and I didn't know how to use it. I'm not a cameraman. I've never used it before, so I basically read some manuals, and that's all I did to learn how to use it. And he took it, knew what to do with it, and did an amazing job of making all that stuff look really good. And so we had a lot of fun working with Savini. He was there for one day. It was kind of tough to nail him down to get him there, and it cost me a little more money than I wanted to spend. But compared to what I've seen it cost other actors to get names in a movie, he did it for a pretty decent price, all things considered. And it's just a neat little cameo. And I hope that he enjoyed seeing his students creating something like that because
Yeah, well, I certainly enjoyed seeing him on camera. Now, you brought up a few minutes ago about how you didn't just do a short film, but I tell you, you sent me a few links to watch, and I watched a short film called A Chance in Hell, and I wanted more. I thought that should be a feature length movie, to be honest with you. I love the way you set it up. I love the beginning because in my brain, I don't want to give away too much to the viewers if they want to go to your site and buy the DVD. I know it's available there, but the way you set the movie up and the way you shot it, it just blew me away. Um, it's basically a Nazi zombie movie for you folks out there who want to know what that the A Chance in Hell is. But I'd like to get your take on what went into making that, because it was so wonderfully shot, and the actors that you had did such a great job. I felt like I was in the war with those guys.
oh, thanks. Yeah, so basically, this is about 2009, and Mitch Martinez, again, the cinematographer, he had just bought a Red One, which is the first Red camera. It was 4K. It was like top of the line for digital filmmaking at the time. And he just basically called me up one day and said, "Hey, I've been doing a lot of commercial and industrial work. I want to shoot something creative. How about I come out to Chicago for a week or two and let's make something? Do you want to make a couple scenes from a feature? Do you want to, because there was an anthology film at the time called Sweet Dreams that I was pitching as being my next project. We talked about potentially shooting a couple scenes for the sequel of It's My Party, which is called You Would Die Too If It Happened to You. And so
Clever.
ultimately, I talked to my friend John Hlusik, who is a writer, and him and I were playing a lot of not Call of Duty Nazi Zombies on our PlayStation 3 at the time.
Yeah, my
And so,
son did too.
yeah, and so we basically said, you know what, why don't we do a Nazi zombie movie? I had been bartending at the time, and I had a regular who had been collecting World War II memorabilia since like the 1960s. And this guy's in his 80s now, and so he just amassed this gigantic collection of
Wow.
weapons and equipment and uniforms. And so he's always told me, you can use any of it if you want for one of your movies. So we basically wrote this 35-page script about these American soldiers who, after the Battle of Bastogne, it's the winter of 1944, and they are now over the German front lines, and they, during a recon mission, come across this Nazi facility where they're experimenting on concentration camp victims and trying to create this super soldier. So it's very Frankenstein's Army, but this was 2009 and 2010, long before Frankenstein's Army came out and any of the other, any of those other, I think, Dead Snow came out in 2009 or 2010. But other than that, there were no other Nazi zombie movies at the time. The previous ones were back in the 60s and 70s with Shockwaves and Zombie Lake, I think, was one of them and stuff.
Oh, I would put that up against Dead Snow any day. I love this movie. I'm going to call it a movie, even though it's 35 minutes. I wanted another hour tacked onto it.
We tried to do that. I mean, we made it in February of 2010. For 8 days, we shot in this old factory, and it was pretty incredible how it all came together. And it was stressful. I mean, I got 1 hour of sleep a night for each of those 8 nights because we did 8 days in a row. We were on set 22 hours a day. I mean, it was grueling. I had a lot more energy back then, but the cool thing about it was that it is what I think defined the potential production value that the people that I bring to the table are able to create. And so it made me very proud to be able to use that as a calling card, because It's My Party, as much as a lot of people do enjoy that movie, and as much as I think it did a good job 15 years ago of kind of introducing me to horror audiences at the independent level, it doesn't age very well. It's a very old looking movie. I shot it standard definition. It's not even HD. And so some people like the look of It's My Party. They think it has that dated look, but I think it looks sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still got a lot of really redeeming qualities. I think the story's fun. There's some good practical effects in it. The choose your own adventure aspect on the DVD that I sell on my website is really great because you get the movie that you watched and you get an additional 20 minutes of footage that you have to pick different directions on the DVD in order to get to them.
I'll definitely check that out for sure.
Yeah. So it's like I told you, return the Amazon one. You get free returns on Amazon. So return that one and pick up the other one. It's better.
Oh yeah. I will. I picked that up just to have it to show on the podcast because I didn't know if I could get it from you fast enough to do that because I just watched it a few days ago. But I will definitely do that. I want to pick up that soundtrack too. We talked about.
Yeah, no, I can get them in the mail on Monday. I appreciate the support.
Oh.
But so at Chance and L, we wrote 2 different versions of a feature length for it. We have a big budget one where the survivor, Sergeant Draper, basically escapes the facility and runs back to the village that his company is held up in, where they've set up kind of their temporary base of operations. And the other creatures from the facility leave the facility and chase after him into the woods and find their way to the village. And so now it's him and a bunch of other of his soldiers fighting off a whole horde of these creatures. And it was a lot bigger budget, and we had a lot of interest at the time. In 2010, you could still take a movie like the short film to Cannes Film Market, and we got a lot of really good pre-sale, financial offers from different countries for the rights to selling the movie. And then ultimately, we just couldn't find any investors to put money into it. Which was really unfortunate. We had some producers in LA who had Ralph Singleton attached as an executive producer. He produced Pet Sematary. He produced and directed Graveyard Shift. He did Murder at 1600 with Wesley Snipes. He did Clear and Present Danger with frickin' Harrison Ford. So I thought, this is it. I thought I made my low budget movie. I made a short film as a concept, and now here we are. We're going to get a couple $1 million. We're going to make this big movie, and no one got us the money for it. So we ultimately ended up, not pursuing anything further with A Chance in Hell. And then all these other Nazi zombie movies came out, and it's like kind of a dying.
Well, like I said, I would hold that up against Dead Snow any day. And like I said, I'd like to see an hour tacked onto it. One other thing I'll mention about that particular short before we move on is the actress at the beginning, the little girl. She was amazing. I don't know where you found her. I don't know what she's doing now, but I saw the fear in her eyes, and she sold me. She was awesome.
So Kendall Lynch, yeah, she's really great. We auditioned a whole bunch of kids for it, and Kendall was, I think, one of 4 young girls, all about, between the ages of like 11 and 13. I think she was 13 at the time. And she just really impressed me. I had all the kids when they came in. I was like, all right, you're ripping this guy apart, and I get all enthusiastic and I'm explaining all this stuff. And I make sure their parents are okay with it,
Right,
I'm like, so you're on top of this guy and you're ripping him to pieces, tearing him apart. Like, I want you to be crazy. So show me crazy. And she just went to town, pretending like she was tearing somebody to shreds and screaming and stuff and growling. And I was instantly taken by her, and her mom, Karen, is really awesome too. So they just instantly became like these fixtures on set of, support and enthusiasm and positivity. And Kendall is now, she's like 24 years old and is, she's like a yoga instructor down in Florida.
Okay.
So, she's living in the sun, and she's running her own business. I think she's got her own gym. So, shout out to her. Yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah, she did a great job. It stuck with me even before the transformation, when they were leading her down the hallway, and she wasn't sure what was going on. Yeah, she just captivated me. So she did a great job. All right, that brings me to another short, and it's a short. Was the Muck? Tell me the concept behind that short film, and what made you come up with that, and what drove it.
So the Muck we did in October of 2013. It premiered at South by Southwest in 2014, which was huge. That's one of the the highlights of my filmmaking career. Everybody wants to go to Sundance, and I would love to obviously have a film at Sundance, because that means that you're going to be surrounded by people that want to buy your stuff. But South by Southwest always struck me as like the cool film festival that was still really popular. So at the time, ABCs of Death 2 was being put together, and they were doing a contest where you could submit a short film for consideration for the letter M. In the first movie, they did the letter T, and so in this one, they did the letter M. And I had 7 other filmmaking friends that were doing a short film for the contest, and they're all like, will you help me? Or, are you doing one? And so I helped, I think, on 3 of them, 2 or 3 of the other ones. But all along, I was like, I'm not going to shoot one, because chances are we're not going to win. I mean, there's going to be hundreds of contestants. There were ultimately 550 films submitted.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, we're probably not going to win. It's going to be very difficult for us to win if we do. So I don't want to spend money, and I don't want to have other people dedicate time to shooting something that is ultimately not going to do anything. And at the time, I've never been a proponent of shooting short films. I think that it's difficult to sell a short film, so all you're really doing is shooting it for practice, And some people obviously make a short film, and then they get the money to make a feature, or somebody sees it and says, I want you to make another movie. But in my experience, I just felt like if I can make a feature, it's at least marketable as something I can sell, like it's my party. So ultimately, one day, I don't even know how it happened, but I was just like, what, screw it. Let's make a short film. And I was living in the house where we shot that in. It's my friend Jim's house, who's one of our crew members. He hasn't really updated the house, so it's very 1980s inside of it. And so I thought, well, I was going to originally do the Muck, and it was going to be about a boy fishing in the pond in our backyard. And he's got a dog with him, and he like turns for a second, and the dog's gone. And then he gets like a bite on his fishing line, and something pulls him in the water. And it's basically like Creepshow 2, the raft short.
Oh, yeah. With the big mass.
I thought, okay.
Yeah.
And I felt bad because the pond in our backyard was kind of dirty. And so I felt bad that I was going to have my friend Jason, who does all my effects stuff. I didn't want him to have to go in the water with like a garbage bag on or anything. So I was like, you know what? Why don't we change it, and we'll make it a girl, like let's say it's a cheerleader coming home from cheerleading practice in high school, and she's at the kitchen sink, and she's washing her hands or something, and it comes out of the sink after. And then I'm like, wait a minute, if I'm going to do that, look, I'm a heterosexual male. I love women. So I'm like, and again, as we talked about 20 minutes ago, horror, in my opinion, traditional horror films is about violence and about, sexuality. It's about all the taboo stuff that you're not supposed to talk about and show. And so I'm like, why not just combine those again? And let's do 6 minutes of a girl coming home from working out, doing, aerobics class in the 80s. And she goes to take a bath and gets eaten by a monster that comes out of the faucet. And so I got the crew together, and these are all the same people that we worked on High on the Hog together, and a couple other things. And so, and at the time, I'm living with Jim, who's one of our grips and lighting and camera guys. And then Rob, who's my cinematographer and co-producer. He wasn't living there at the time, but he moved in like 2 months later. So we basically it was a family event where we spent the weekend in our house shooting this movie. And it turned out fantastic. I mean, Rob's cinematography absolutely blows people away when they see it. And Sarah Sharp, who's one of our constant collaborators, she did the production design and just really helped build upon the already 80s aesthetic that the house had in it. And I think it turned out rather well. It's something I'm very proud of, and to this day, it is in terms of festival success, it's still the largest accomplishment that any of us have had. Nobody's gotten another film to South by Southwest or Sundance, so it's something we're happy with.
Yeah, it's simple and it's straight to the point, and it hits all the buttons for a horror nerd like me. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was only 6 minutes long. So Super short. Well, I'm going to talk about a couple of movies that I did actually purchase directly from you. I met you a couple years ago at Days of the Dead in Atlanta, and I picked up The Rake. And I saw it a few days after I picked it up from you, and I haven't seen it again until today. So I popped it in. Well, I didn't pop it in. My friend has the DVD. He borrowed it, and I got to get it back from him. But I turned it on a streaming service today and was watching it. But I put my Bluetooth headset on, and one thing I noted about The Rake that I really didn't note the first time that I watched it was the soundtrack. That thing was amazing in the way it built tension throughout the movie. If you want to give our listeners a little overview of what The Rake is about, I don't want to say too much because a lot of people need to watch this movie. I don't want to spoil it, but kind of give us a synopsis of what it's about and who did your soundtrack for that movie.
I appreciate the compliments. I'm glad you liked it, and yeah, it's nice that that's what drew you to becoming a Scotchworthy fan. For those of you who don't know, Scotchworthy Productions is the name of my company. So it means a lot to me that you supported us right off the bat. Atlanta is actually the last convention that I've been to because of COVID. So I was just talking to my buddy who was there with us. He plays Charlie in Skeletons in the Closet, and I was just talking to him a couple hours ago about like going to another convention because I just miss it. So basically, The Rake we shot in 2015. It's a psychological thriller, or it's a monster movie wrapped within a psychological thriller is how I like to consider it. Because at the core, it's a monster movie, but the broad stroke of it, if you're focusing on the 85 minutes of the movie, it's a psychological thriller. And it's about Ben and Ashley, who, as young children in the mid-90s, their father's a psychologist, and one of his mental patients basically breaks into their house and murders the parents, and then kills himself in front of the kids. And this killer, Jacob Murphy, believes that he has this creature called the Rake within him. It's like a pestilence or a disease that infects you and causes everything around you to rot and decay, whether it's positivity or life or health or happiness or anything. It just all withers and dies. And it's perpetual. It like continues to infect things. It's like COVID, before COVID was a thing. And so basically, we fast forward now to present day, and Ben and Ashley have been adopted by a man, a widow, or widower. I don't know, a widower.
Widower, yep.
Because he's got a young daughter who's about their age, and he wants her to have companionship. So he adopts Ben and Ashley, and we don't really get into those details very much. But now at this point, they're all adults in their 30s, and Nicole, their foster sister, is moving back after a stint in California for her husband's job. She's moving back to the Midwest and is really hoping to rekindle her relationship with Ben and Ashley, because as much as they are foster siblings, in her mind, they are very much so her blood brother and sister. And she has some news. She's pregnant. And so she really wants to try and get a closeness with her family again, because her father has recently passed away. And so once they get into the house and Ben and Ashley end up showing up at the house, we realize that though Ben has tried to move past the horrors of their childhood, Ashley has very much so, being the younger of the two. And she, at the time of her parents' murder, she was, I think, only 5 years old. So it was very impressionable experience for her. And so she believes that the Rake is actually inside of her as well, and that it infected her. And so we spend majority of the film dealing with this PTSD and the psychosis that Ashley has of this so-called infection, and what it's doing to her and what it's doing to everybody around her. And you see how her family members handle her disability, her mental disability. And then ultimately we realize that the Rake is in fact real and is a monster. And as it's kind of like Freddy Krueger or Candyman, where it continues to gather strength. And so as it continues to gather strength, killing people, it becomes more prevalent in the film. And so the second half of the movie is very much so a slasher film with a monster, whereas the first half is very psychological thriller, like I said.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the young lady who played Ashley. I don't recall the actress's name, but she did a great job portraying that trauma that she had been through. With the bathroom scene when she took the shower, and then Nicole was chasing after her, knocking on her door, and uh, all those interactions. It felt real. So you did a great job there, and she did a great job, because I couldn't at that point on my first viewing. Is this real or is it not real? I kept going back and forth until you revealed that it was. But I didn't know if it was all in her head or if it wasn't.
We
So
got that's one of the things about that movie that we got really fortunate with, is that we partnered with a production company in LA, who connected us with the named actors, and so we got Rachel Melvin to play Nicole.
okay,
Rachel Melvin was in Dumb and Dumber 2. She played the daughter of them, which it's not a great movie, but I thought she was really fun in it and super cute and spunky. And this is a stark contrast for a role, but she was
oh
also
yeah,
in a really great horror movie called Zombievers. Um,
oh I
and
saw
so
that. Yeah,
I saw that like probably 3 or 4 months before we started casting for the Rake. So when they they were like, here's these Zoom calls. I interviewed the blonde from Cabin in the Woods. I
hmm,
interviewed her and a couple of other girls from like some big TV shows. I think one of them I was going to interview one of the girls from Shameless, and
okay,
so it was really cool. I was like, man, this is amazing. Here I am. I'm a director. This is technically at that point, it was my third feature. And I'd worked with Sid Haig and Robert Zadarin and Joe Estevez on High and the Hog. And I worked with Tom Savini on It's My Party. But like, these are younger in the, what I would consider A-list or low or high B-list actors, that are relevant nowadays. And so that was really exciting for me. And Rachel just knocked it out of the park. Her talking to her online, through the Skype call, like she was just so enthusiastic about it. So I wanted her instantly because I loved her in Zombievers, and then we didn't even have Ashley cast. We had Ashley cast with a previous actress, and then our producers in LA were pretty much like forcibly saying, "Look, you need to put a name in this role. We're bringing a name to the table. We just don't know who we're getting yet." And so we literally, the first day of shooting, we didn't have our Ashley actress cast yet, and they were like, "We're working on it. You guys shoot the movie." So they're in LA working on getting us an actress. That next morning, the second day, they let us know it's Shanae Grimes, who was in Degrassi. She was in Scream 4. She's done a bunch of stuff. And
right,
so we were like, okay, well, this is exciting. She literally flew to Illinois that morning, came on a set, and did the first scene. And the first scene that she was in was her and Nicole on the driveway when she's trying to leave. And Nicole's like, please, it's during the sunset.
right, right,
And
right.
right off the bat, we knew this is incredible. I mean, the chemistry that these two actresses have, and um, Shanae did not disappoint, considering she showed up an hour before we shot her scene.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
yeah. So
All right, guys. If you want to watch The Rake, I would advise you to go to scotchworthy.com and pick up the DVD. It's worth it. So get it in your collection and give it a watch if you haven't seen it already. And even if you have seen it on a streaming service, still go to scotchworthy.com and pick up the DVD so you have it in your collection.
yeah, it's got
All
some really great practical special effects work in it. The performances are good. I think the production design and the cinematography are really great. It's just I'm very proud of the atmosphere that we built in that movie. I think it's got a really cool, brooding, ominous nature to it. Very reminiscent of The Shining,
hmm
which is what I was going for with it. But you can stream it on. I think it's on. You can rent it on Amazon. I think it might still be on Tubi. But then
It
you have
is.
to watch commercials with it. And I would much
Exactly.
rather if people are willing to just go support independent film. With the DVD, you also get a QR code to watch the behind the scenes video, which is like an hour and a half documentary of how we made the movie, which I think is really good for other budding independent filmmakers and people like that. Um, And, once you purchase stuff for me, then you've kind of got my email and you can reach out and talk to me and ask me questions and stuff. And I love talking horror films with other people.
Well, that's awesome. That's going to bring me up to another film I want to talk about just for a few minutes. I don't know if it's your most popular film to date, but I really enjoyed it. It's the one you have a vinyl record out for, but it's Skeletons in the Closet. I picked this up from Scotchworthy.com. If you haven't seen Skeletons in the Closet, and I know lots and lots and lots and lots of people have, but if you haven't, go to Scotchworthy.com, pick up this DVD. It's a great little anthology movie. So it's got how many short stories does it have total? Is it 4?
Technically, it's like 6.
6. Okay.
Technically, yeah. I appreciate your compliments on it. Again, it's funny because it started out as we were making an anthology called Chop Shop, which was 4 different directors coming together, and each of us were going to make a short film. The 4 short films had nothing to do with one another. They were all entirely different. And this was just something we were going to do because at the time VHS was pretty popular. And so we said, well, why don't we, let's do an anthology film. And so my co-director on it, Ben, had reached out to me and a couple other Chicago area filmmakers and said, let's make, an anthology, and you can do whatever you want, spend as much or as little as you want, shoot it on whatever you want, doesn't matter. So we made 4 short films. And, I did the one with the grandma and the little girl. Ben did the 2 criminals in the junkyard. And after like a year or so, year and a half, we kind of got to the point where we wanted to create, the following year after we shot them, we wanted to create a wraparound that would tie all the movies together. And we had a really creative way of doing it where, again, we had this whole idea of the chop shop where you've got this man whose first person point of view, kind of like Hardcore Henry, he's going through purgatory and he's being processed to spend an eternity in hell. And you don't know who he is. And as you get through the movie, you realize who he is from these short films and what all these short films have to do with this. It's like all the characters are essentially suffering in purgatory or are being processed through it. And that's what the chop shop is. The chop shop is purgatory, where you are processed to go to hell.
Oh, wow.
And so we were really excited about the fact that we were able to put them all together and make it a congruous story instead of just, 4 random shorts that just happened to be packaged together. And after we shot that in 2013, then it was like late 2013, early 2014. And at that point, 2 of the directors were kind of like, you know what? I don't really like the wraparound. I've never really supported it. I would rather just take my short film and do my own thing with it. And so Ben and I said, you know what? That's fine. If you guys want to take your movies, you can. You paid for them. Do it. So then Ben and we got distracted with World of Death, which was the web series I did with Bloody Disgusting for 6 years. We got distracted with taking the Muck to all the different film festivals across the country. Then we started on the Rake. We were editing High on the Hog. And so Chop Shop kind of took a back seat. So finally in 2016, in the fall of 2016, I sat down with Ben and I said, look, I've always had this idea for something called Skeletons in the Closet in my head since college. So it's about the widow and Charlie. It's basically if Elvira was married to the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. And they have a very Peg and Al Bundy relationship because the widow has murdered her husband, Charlie. She poisons him and she keeps his body in the basement, kind of like Wayne's World. And so every episode of this show, Skeletons in the Closet, she goes down to the basement and has rented videotapes, and her dead husband watch these movies together. And, they comment on it while also bickering back and forth because he's mad that she's murdered him. And his hell is now basically having to deal with his murderous wife, and whenever
He's stuck with her. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I love my wife, but anybody who's married for a long period of time understands, what that can be like,
32 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is amazing, man.
It is.
I was
So
9 when we got married.
we're Charlie and the Widow. My name is Charlie, so
Mm-hmm.
that's appropriate.
Well, just I would watch whatever you're drinking if your wife hands you an open beverage.
Nice.
So yeah, so basically I pitched Ben and then Rob, who is our cinematographer and co-producer. Rob had also shot The Rake, and Rob shot High and the Hog and The Muck. So Rob's like my brother, and so it was like, okay, Rob shot all the other Chop Shop movies. So we said, Rob, and I said to Ben, I said, here's my idea. Here's The Widow and Charlie. And then I've got this other wraparound with a little girl who's their number one fan watching the TV show. And then on the TV show, The Widow and Charlie, which is their show, Skeletons in the Closet, they're watching this movie, Chop Shop. And that's how we can now incorporate these 2 short films that we made that add up to about 50 minutes of time, runtime, and we're not doing anything with them. So let's make a feature out of it. And, it didn't take a lot of convincing. I think that they both were pretty excited about the concept and the idea that we wouldn't have to spend more than like 5 days shooting the 2 wraparounds. Because I think we did 3 days with the little girl and the babysitter, and then we did 2 days with the Widow and Charlie. And that was all like March and April of 2017. So we were able to just get those done really fast. I brought my co-writer, John Halusik from A Chance in Hell, back, and him and I wrote the Skeletons in the Closet stuff. And, we just put it all together, and then Ben and I basically edited it for the next year. And then we premiered it in September of 2018. And, I think it's one of those things where I think that some people do believe that the movie's confusing. I think part of the reason is because people don't tend to watch a movie with 100% of attention anymore. People are on their phones. They get up and go to the bathroom. They grab a snack and they don't pause it. And so, and I'm guilty of that too. So I just think that people don't pay a ton of attention to a movie unless they're watching it in the theater. And then you couple that with the fact that it's 6 different stories. So there's a lot of back and forth.
Right,
but,
right.
I wish that movie watching was like it was in the 80s and 90s, where if you wanted to watch something, you had to go to the video store and rent it. And so back then it was so much easier to make a movie and have it be successful, because if a video store picked it up, people were probably going to rent it.
That's right.
Whereas nowadays, there's so many different streaming services that you might be able to get more exposure by getting it out there all over the place. But people have so many choices. You and I are horror fans. How often do you spend an hour and a half going through Tubi and Amazon and Shudder and Netflix trying to find a horror movie to watch, only to just give up and turn the TV off?
You're speaking my language. Exactly. I pine for the days of my youth. I'm an 80s kid, so I remember the video stores going, just looking at the horror section, grabbing everything that I could, watching all those 80s horror movies, going back to the Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, all those popular 80s movies, Mausoleum, all that stuff. I miss it. I miss it.
I miss it too. I worked at a video store in high school. I worked in 2 different video stores, and I spent so many days in those stores before I even worked at them. And it's just, it's sad that every generation, when you get to our age, when you hit that middle-aged time period, you start to say, oh, if only it was like the good old days. And every generation does that,
Exactly.
Our parents look at the 1950s and say that was the best decade in American history. And I don't disagree. I'm sure it was amazing. But for me, going back to the 80s would be a dream come true. Life was easier. You didn't have as many distractions. And I just, the ability to ingest content back then was such an experience, whereas now it's just like, it's almost like background.
Experience is the right word.
Yeah.
Experience is the right word. An event. Like when I was a kid, my mother and father divorced when I was young, and I spent my weekends at my dad's house, and my stepmother would take us to rent all these movies. And the excitement level that I had every Friday when we go to the video store, I can't recapture that, because it was I so look forward to picking out all these horror movies, and we'd stay up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning watching these things, and there's nothing like it. But for me, There's nothing like it.
No, I agree 100%. I had similar experience for me. And I mean, it's Friday night right now. If it was 1992, you and I would be getting off this phone call. We wouldn't be video chatting. We'd be getting off the phone call, and we'd be getting in our cars, and we'd be going to the video store. And it wouldn't even be Blockbuster. It'd be a mom and pop video store. There's one or two of them in the town, and we would be in the horror section renting 2 or 3 videotapes. And that would be our Friday and Saturday nights. And
that's right.
I'm excited to watch Ozark tonight. We just wrapped up that Archive 81 on Netflix, which if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it.
I watched episode 1 last night, so I will continue it. But last night before I went to bed, I liked the first episode, but it was a setup, and I know there's more coming. It looked like it was going to be crazy. I'm at the point I don't want to ruin it, so I won't say another word about it. But yeah, it was good. It wrapped me, so I'll definitely catch another couple episodes tonight.
Very well produced, really, really cool show, great production design. But yeah, so it's just not the same. And I was the same. My parents got divorced and they split up when I was like 10 years old. So when we would go to my dad's house, my dad's the horror fan. That's where I got it from. And so we would go there and he'd be like, all right, we can go and rent a movie. And so we go. That's the first time I saw Chud was at my dad's apartment right after my parents split up. And we rented that. And we used to watch USA Up all night with my dad. And, it's like, sure. Kids nowadays, teenagers, they can watch Joe Bob Briggs on Shudder, but they can watch Elvira. I think she's got some stuff on Hulu or whatever, but it's just not the same.
No, it's not. It's not. Picking up physical video cassette boxes and looking at them in the video store is different than flipping through a screen. It just is. All right. Well, let's move on to High on the Hog. That's one I haven't seen yet. I told you I was going to rent it over the weekend and give it a watch. So we'll talk about that briefly, and then we'll jump into what you got going on now. But what was it like working with the late, great Sid Haig?
I mean, phenomenal. Yeah. He's as amazing of a person. He was as amazing of a person as he portrays. Like when you're at a convention and you walk up and talk to him at his table. And, the cool thing about Sid is that, like, I met him for the first time in February of 2008 at the Fangoria Chicago convention, which was the first convention I was selling it to my party at. And he was there. And I went up and just introduced myself and said, I loved you in House of a Thousand Corpses because I really liked that movie. I enjoyed that so much more than Devil's Rejects. And so I was just like, dude, I really liked you in that movie. You were funny as hell. And I didn't really understand the history that Sid Haig has in the business at that time. And so it was, I asked for his agent information and stuff, figured, maybe I'll call him to be in another movie. At that time, I was doing that with everybody at the conventions. And then 4 years later, I got hired to direct him in that movie. And honestly, it's the reason why I directed that movie. It wasn't a horror movie. That I wanted a second feature under my belt, and the money was there for the budget. So I didn't have to go and try and raise money for my own movie. But otherwise, I was just like, the opportunity to direct somebody like Sid Haig was a really amazing opportunity. And I had a director who I worked at an advertising company with who had done a movie with Joe Estevez prior to that. And he was just like, oh, him and Robert Zadar, they're alcoholics and they're really messed up and you're going to have a hard time working with them. My condolences ahead of time. And so he's telling me this like a week before I go off to shoot this movie. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to take this guy's words with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
We shot in Galena, Illinois, which is like 3 hours west of Chicago. And we spent a month living out there in a roadside motel, all the cast and crew living together. And the first week was grueling. It was really poorly set up, and I have no problem admitting that because I don't care. It was stressful. It was unorganized. The producers didn't know their heads from their assholes, and ultimately, after the first week, one of the producers walked off set, and I'll tell you what, at that point, the executive producer called me up and said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, I've talked with Rob, again, cinematographer Robert Patrick Stern. I said, look, Rob and I have said that if you give us producing credits, we'll step up. We will help you run the set. And at the same time, the guy, Bob, who we were shooting on his farm, he was basically like, I'll help with, locations and anything I can. So he became a producer. And then Sid Haig was like, you know what? I think that this crew really possesses integrity and tenacity, and I want to see that through. I want them to be able to finish this movie. Let's not let this producer who walked off set, ruin this experience. And so that it was the 5th day of shooting that she had walked off that morning. And I'll tell you what, that night when we shot was amazing. Everybody instantly could feel how the dynamic had shifted and how
it was addition by subtraction. Yep.
Yeah, she was literally a toxin on that set, and as soon as she left, the dynamic changed, and we became a family, and it was an incredible experience. So Sid was a amazing mentor in a lot of ways. We were friends for many years after that. We would spend time at the conventions. Nice. I would sit at his booth and help him with his people and his fans and stuff, and we always talked about making another movie together, and unfortunately it didn't happen, which really disappointed me. But, I have some really amazing experiences with him I always tell the story about sitting at a bar with him one night where we were shooting a scene. We had shot, like I said, 4 days, and this producer who had walked off set was also an actress in the movie. And so when she walked off set, we had to reshoot some of the scenes that she was in. So we basically added 2 days to shooting. So we were there for 24 instead of 22 days, I think is what it was. And that's what happened is we walked on set that night after she walked off, and Sid and Rob and I stood up in front of everybody and said, okay, guys, here's the deal. This person left. We are now the producers. If you guys are willing to stick with us, we need to add 2 days to the shoot schedule. But if you're willing to stay here and finish with us, we promise you we're going to make an amazing movie. This is going to be a great experience from here on out. And everybody was like super enthusiastic. And so one night we were reshooting one of the scenes. It's like the chicken coop scene. Well, you haven't seen it yet. So there's the chicken coop scene. And we were losing daylight. And so Rob and I were really disappointed with how it was looking. And everybody was kind of stressed out because we were losing our daylight. And so at the end of the shoot, we kind of just finished, and I was like, God, fuck, I'm just so pissed off it didn't look good. I walk over to Sid, who's, changing out of his overalls, and I'm like, hey, Sid, and he's like, yeah, what's up? And I'm like, you want to go get a beer? And he's like, fuck yeah. And so him and I and the executive producer had a friend who was out there for like a week or two, kind of as Sid's assistant, helping him out.
Right.
And so the three of us drove to this little hole-in-the-wall bar in Elizabeth, Illinois. And we sat at the bar. We drank cans of Busch Light. And Sid gave us some of the best stories of being in the film business for 5 years at the time. And talking about working with Roger Corman and, just all these people that you think about are just like, wow, like you have some tremendous experiences that you're shedding on me, and the advice he provided. And then he bought me a 12-pack of Busch Light and told me to go back to the set and hang out with, some of the girls.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, the first Sid Haig movie I ever saw was actually a science fiction movie, and the title slips my old brain at the moment, but I remember the girl from Happy Days was in it.
Galaxy of Terror.
Yeah, Galaxy of Terror. That was it. I wanted to say Terror, but I couldn't remember the rest. But yeah, that was the first movie I saw Sid in.
Joni's in it.
Yeah, Joni's in it.
And
that's
Erin, I forgot.
Erin Moran.
Erin Moran. Yeah, I always get her and Erin Gray, who was Wonder Woman, mixed up. Erin Moran was in it, and Robert Englund, a very, very young Robert Englund was in that movie.
I remember him too. Yeah.
And then Sid Haig plays like this guy. He has like 2 lines in the entire movie.
Yeah, but that's the first movie I saw him in.
Yeah. So I always used to have fun bullshitting with him about Galaxy of Terror. Be like, why'd they only give you 2 lines, Sid? What's up with that? Um, yeah, and he was in Spider Baby and
Yeah.
obviously the Rob Zombie movies, and just a great personality, a really wonderful person. Um, I miss the hell out of him, and I really regret that we didn't get a chance to work together with him again. We were trying to get him into Chop Shop to play the processor in Hell,
Hmm.
and it just would have been too expensive to get him
Yeah.
out for a few days. But in hindsight, I really wish we would have done it and just taken advantage of it, because not only would Skeletons in the Closet potentially have a bigger audience having him in it, but it would have been another opportunity to hang out with him for a few days.
Right. Right. Well, he is sorely missed by horror fans for sure, and I'm one of them. All right, we've kind of reminisced about the movies you've done. So let's talk about what you're doing now. You gave me a little a bite on Bloody Bites, something that's coming out on Bloody Disgusting TV. So tell our listeners what that is and where they can find it and when it's going to happen.
Yeah, I haven't directed a movie in 4 years. I'm definitely itching really bad to get back behind the camera, but in the interim, I've really developed an awesome working relationship with Bloody Disgusting, which, if you don't know Bloody Disgusting, why are you listening to a horror podcast? They are pretty much the predominant name on the internet for horror in terms of websites. And so Bloody Disgusting, they've done a whole bunch of different things over the years. They're the producers of the VHS franchise. They did Southbound, a couple offshoots from those, like that movie Siren. And
Love that movie.
yeah,
Have it in my collection.
it's fun. And so I've actually known Brad and Tom, who own Bloody Disgusting, run Bloody Disgusting. I've known them since 2009. Tom and I have the same accountant, and so because they're both from Illinois too, and so my accountant, I saw him, and he's like, "Well, Tony, you should really talk to one of my other clients. He runs Bloody Disgusting." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's about your age, and he runs that website, Bloody Disgusting." So we ended up meeting up, and Brad, who's one of the other, one of the 2 guys who owns it, really was a big fan of It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To. And so we always just kind of like talked at the conventions and connected here and there. And then in 2014, I went to him and said, "Hey, we've got this concept for this show called World of Death, which is just taking short horror films from around the world and putting them together in a show." And he's like, "That's awesome. We'll show it on our YouTube. You organize it and curate it. We'll make you the short film curator for BloodyDisgusting.com. And let's do that." So we did World of Death for 6 years. We released over 220 episodes. And so we premiered over 500 short films. We represented more than 50 countries, which is pretty awesome. We created a really incredible little community of independent filmmakers. And a number of these people have done some pretty cool things. Gigi Guerrero is a World of Death filmmaker. She's done some pretty cool things for Hulu and for Amazon. She did Bingo Hell most recently. And a number of other filmmakers that have just done some pretty cool stuff. And so in 2020, Bloody Disgusting, Tom and Brad came to me and said, "Tony, we're starting a TV channel. It's a streaming channel through Roku." And because Roku has the Roku channel on their app, and you can click on that, and it's all like streaming television.
I have a Roku television sitting in front of me.
You can play Bloody Disgusting TV, and you should, because I program the 24/7 schedule. So
Okay.
it's got some pretty cool stuff on there. And so they said we're premiering this October of 2020. We would love for you to be a part of this, and we want to transition World of Death to this channel now. Their YouTube doesn't get a lot of attention compared to the website, and so they're like, World of Death just doesn't have the audience that we want it to have. So let's do something on Bloody Disgusting TV. So we decided to do a new show, and we kind of transitioned to a show called Bloody Bites, where with World of Death, we were pretty much just like anybody and anybody can submit their film, and we'll showcase it, because my opinion has always been, you never know who's going to be tomorrow's John Carpenter. you know.
True.
And if I was a 13-year-old and something like World of Death existed and I wanted to make a movie, I would take advantage of that. And at the time, World of Death, our youngest filmmaker was 13 years old. And so I took a lot of pride in the ability to showcase work from anybody and everybody. But with Bloody Bites, what we've done is we've said, you know what, we're going to focus a little more on quality over quantity. And we want to bring some of the best independent horror short films out there to our audience and just really give them an incredible show to pay attention to and enjoy. And so at this point, we've been running through Bloody Disgusting TV since October of 2020. I think we've premiered about 20 something episodes. And it's pretty cool. Bloody Disgusting TV, like I said, is a 24/7 live channel. So it's similar to like a cable channel where
Right.
you turn it on and it's whatever's playing is what's playing. Like I said, I program the channel, so there's a lot of cool older and some newer horror films on there. I like programming a lot of the 80s shit on there, so I put Piranha, The Stepfather, Popcorn, Madman,
Oh yeah.
a lot of those movies on there. And then we've got a lot of cool new stuff, like the Boo Crew is a pretty popular podcast, and they have a video show of that's on there. And then we have Bloody Bites as well. And so that's something that if people have a short film and they want to, send it our way, we can consider it to be on there. And, at this point, we're pretty excited because the company that was helping Bloody Disgusting with the channel is Cinedigm. Cinedigm is this gigantic conglomerate, media company, kind of like Viacom or something like that, And so they have thousands of channels. They own thousands of movies. They're just this gigantic publicly traded company. And so they first of all started the channel with Bloody Disgusting. And then about half a year later, they actually purchased Bloody Disgusting from Brad and Tom. And so now Bloody Disgusting is part of Cinedigm. And the cool thing is that Cinedigm also purchased Screambox, which is Shudder's competitor.
Yeah.
And so their goal is to really get Screambox reorganized and rebranded. And us at Bloody Disgusting are basically going to be programming and curating the content on Screambox, including creating new content for it, which is really exciting. And so I can't really talk about the things we're discussing doing in the future, but it's stuff that'll make you very happy, Charles. I'll leave it at that.
Awesome.
Knowing what you're a fan of.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check out Screenbox. I have a Shudder subscription, but I'm going to check out Screenbox, and I am going to my Roku television, and I'm going to get that channel you were talking about on Bloody Disgusting, so I can see your programming. So I'm going to do that.
I appreciate that. You can also check it out on Pluto, Sling, Vizio. I think TCL TVs, smart TVs, Rad TV, which is an app, MX Player, which is an app. You can find it somehow through PlayStation, Amazon Fire Stick, Apple TV. I mean, it's pretty much available anywhere. I don't know all the ways to find it because I only watch it through Roku, but
Gotcha.
It is available all over the place. And there's a lot of pretty cool of things on there that a lot of people like just having it on in the background. It's like, if I'm working on something or if I'm, sitting and I need something on in the background, I'll just put on Bloody Disgusting TV and let it play.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to post links definitely on the YouTube, on my YouTube channel of this podcast. So I'll make sure people can navigate to where you have your movies available. But at this point, let me let you get the opportunity to do a recap on where people can find your stuff, can find your movies, can purchase directly from you. So let's do that.
So you can go to my website, which is scotchworthy.com. It would be best for you to write that out. I should have thought of a name that's easier to think of, but Scotchworthy is like a bottle of scotch, and like worthy, like we are not worthy. Just one word. It goes back to an old bet between me and a filmmaking friend of mine that I can talk about at some other point. But so scotchworthy.com. There's a store on the website there. You can go and you can check out all of our movies, the trailers and everything around there, and a little bit about them, some pictures. And then there's a store, and you go to the store link and you can pick up copies of all the movies on there for the most part. And you can pick up all sorts of other things. We've got shirts for Skeletons in the Closet and a couple of the other films. We've got the soundtrack that you were talking about. If you are a vinyl collector, I highly recommend picking up one of the last couple copies I have of the Skeletons in the Closet vinyl. We limited it to 100 for the pressing. It's a neon green record. It is a really great 80s throwback soundtrack that I think turned out really, really incredibly well.
And I will post an image of that vinyl on the YouTube feed so people can see it.
I wish I had one sitting here. I have one in a stack over there, but I'm not going to get up and grab it.
That's all right. I'll stick an image on there.
Nice. But yeah, so you can pick up all sorts of stuff at Scotchworthy.com. You can find trailers on YouTube. I have my YouTube channel is Scotchworthy TV. I've been uploading slowly all the old World of Death episodes to that, so you can binge World of Death if you want. I have all the trailers to my other movies. We also did during COVID, during 2020, we did watch parties for all the films, so we were able to do those. My wife's over here. Are you looking for the record? It's probably in the stack over there, or I have it upstairs. So it's, if you go to the YouTube channel, you can always check out some of these watch parties where Rob and myself, we had Jason, who was our effects guy, on one of the episodes, and those were a lot of fun to do. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I got Vimeo page too. But I think the best thing is just, if you like horror movies, you're not going to be disappointed spending money investing in collecting some Scotchworthy stuff, because it's no credit of my own. It's just I have incredibly talented friends who put a lot of tenacity and diligence into creating some of the best looking independent stuff, in my opinion. And it's definitely worth the money. So, I just hope that people are willing to support us and go there, and I'll get it in the mail as soon as possible.
Yes, sir. And I do want to give one, I hate using the word shout out because it sounds so old, but I'm going to say shout out. I have a good friend of mine. His name is Donnie. I won't use his last name here, but he is a huge Scotchworthy fan, and he has the vinyl, and I think he has most of your movies. So if you would say hello to Donnie, it would make his night.
Donnie M?
Donnie M, yeah.
Oh, I love Donnie. I'd say his last name. I love Donnie. He is one of those. I'd say there's probably two of them. Donnie and this guy named Brad. Brad V. I'll leave it at that. The two of them are like our biggest fans. I think a lot of that has to do with Ellie Church being in High on the Hog and Skeletons in the Closet. She's got a really great dedicated fan base. But Brad and Donnie are just really awesome, super supportive people who are like, if you're at a convention, we want to come and hang out with you. We want to say hi. We want to grab a drink. We want to buy whatever you have that's new. We don't care if it's a movie we already have. If you've got the new edition of it, if you've got a reprinting, if you've got a new T-shirt, we want it because we want to support you. And it's just that is why I do this. I think about being a fan myself of the genre, and it's just horror is everything to me. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have my horror posters and my horror T-shirts and the horror movies to watch. I don't know what I would do with my time. And so when there are other people out there that I meet that are as into it as I am, such as yourself, for example, and who are willing to put $100 up to, buy your catalog of work and say, look, we want you to keep doing this. So we're going to support you by paying for your stuff to help you, make this a little bit easier. It means everything.
You're absolutely right. And Donnie M, he's a big supporter of everyone. So
yes.
The last probably 6 books that I released for pre-order, he was the first one.
Yeah.
Everyone, every time. And the last book that I released was called Midnight Rider. He came up with the concept. I put a thing out there one day asking for ideas from people who actually read my stuff, and Donnie was the first one to chime in. I read what he put out there, and I was like, wow, that's pretty damn good. So I took it and ran with it. And so Donnie's more than a fan. He's a contributor, too. So shout out Donnie M.
Yeah, shout out to Donnie M. I love Donnie M.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so like in terms as a writer, like giving advice, because I've especially with COVID, I really tossed around the idea of writing a novel. What's the best advice you can give someone who's looking to take on the begrudged, experience of writing a novel?
Well, for me, when I was a kid, I was a Stephen King kid growing up, and some
Same
Dean
here.
Koontz mixed in,
Same here.
and yeah. So that's where the writing bug really hit me. But when I sit down to write a novel, I don't sit down to write unless I have something to write. That's when I get into trouble a lot of time, when I try to force something. But my process is I have an idea, and I kind of map it out. I have a beginning and an end, and the middle is a little foggy. But it comes to me as I try to make my way to the end of the story. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's kind of my process. So I kind of make sure that I have my ending in mind, and that changes a lot of times. Like when I sit down to write, sometimes the end goes way off in the left field. Sometimes the book becomes something I never imagined it being when I start writing it, but that's just where the story takes me. But advice to someone who wants to write, don't give up if that's really what you want to do. I've had lots of people message me on my author page on Facebook asking me kind of the same question and sending me things to read to say, hey, can you kind of critique this? And I do. And I follow up with some of those people, and they kind of just drop it. So it's a little disheartening when they just drop it, because I know they have something there, and I try to encourage them. So if you really want to write, you just have to write. Your first go at it may be crappy, but that's fine. You'll get up to speed. Once you put something down, you'll go over it again and again and again. But get it down. Just get the thing down, and then you can go back and tweak it and all that. The hard part for me isn't writing; it's the rewrite. When I have to go back to the beginning and start over and comb through the story, and then I see things I want to change. But that's how it is for me. And I don't know if that was a rambling answer. I don't know if I even really answered your question, but that's kind of how it is for me.
First of all, you can tell I like to talk. Second of all, that's identical to my process. I always compare it to in Hellraiser when Frank is like building back up. He starts as the skeleton, and then all the goo and stuff gets up onto the bones, and then all of a sudden he's got the flesh and the muscle and everything. And it's like you start with that concept, like, oh, I've got the opening scene, or I've got the ending and the beginning, but nothing else. And it always fleshes itself out. The biggest thing is, like you said, the biggest struggle I have is the rewrites, because when I have something done, I want to move on. And I also think it's good. So I don't want to, I'm my worst critic, because it's like, I don't look at it and say, oh, this is terrible. I look at it and say, well, I'm done with it, so why do I have to redo it? And it's not even an ego thing. It's more of a laziness thing. It's like, I just don't want to have to redo it again because I already wrote it. So I agree with you there. But no, I think it is a tedious process, and you really have to have that tenacity to get through there. And because it takes a long time. I mean, I wrote a script. I was very proud of myself because I wrote the first script I've written from start to finish on my own this last year, and it took me about a half year to write it. But when I was done, I was just like, "Oh my god, I just wrote a script."
Well, that's another question I get. How long does it take for you to write a novel? Now, when I sit down and write, 75,000 word novel, it's generally, my general answer is it's a pregnancy term, so it's about 9 months. That's what it
How
takes.
many pages is 75,000 words?
Well, in my type, it's about 350, 320 pages, somewhere around there.
See, that's amazing. If I could write a 350 page novel, I would. It is definitely a bucket list item that I need to do, because I've told myself if I can do that, I'll feel like I can accomplish just about anything, and the thing too is, like, making a movie is hard because you have to rely on finding the money, finding locations, getting
Right.
a crew of people, getting a cast of people, getting everybody together, shooting it all, dedicating time to that. Whereas with writing a novel, obviously it's not easy. It's very difficult, but all you got to do is sit at a desk or sit on
It's
your couch,
it's right there.
yeah, and just pull it all out of your brain, and then you can do it. And that's what I love, is the prospect of me being able to sit in this proverbial office that I might have when I move into my house, whenever that is, and be able to sit in that office at a desk that I have put there with my horror stuff surrounding me to inspire me, with a horror soundtrack record playing in the background. That just, it sounds like something that I'm really going to get into.
Oh yeah.
I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
looking forward to it. Now, here, my lovely wife went, and so we've got, just so the audience can see, so you've got the Skeletons in the Closet
Ooh,
soundtrack,
nice.
which obviously has the glare from the screen on.
It's good right there. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
it's right
nice.
there. So that's pretty cool. You've got all the track lists and everything on the back. My wife did a great job doing the graphic design on it. And then the inner sleeve is actually, this is drawn by Adam Michaels, who plays Charlie in the movie. He's an artist. His stuff is called Adam's Art Box, and he does a lot of really awesome stuff. So he
That
made
is awesome.
these paper masks of the Widow and Charlie. And then, like I said, neon green vinyl, which is pretty badass.
That is badass.
Yeah. So
Nice.
there's only a handful of copies left. We only did a pressing of 100 of that. So if you like 80s movies, if you like 80s soundtracks, it is right up that alley. Some really good original songs on there. So
Yeah, I'll definitely be picking one of those up before you sell out of them. So that's awesome. All right, well, Tony, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you one last question. So you
Sure.
said you grew up I did too. Stephen King, Dean Koontz, John Saul, Robert McCammon. I read a couple books by Stephen King and Koontz. What are your favorite novels by both of them?
Oh, geez. Well, Stephen King, there are too many to name, but one that's probably not as popular that a lot of people maybe haven't read was Do McKee. I really enjoyed that book.
I didn't read that one.
Okay, well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's about oddly enough, it's about a writer, and he's going through. It was released around the time Stephen King was going through his personal stuff with his alcoholism and that kind of thing, and you can kind of see that in the book. But I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But check out Do McKee by Stephen King. It's not one of his more popular books, but it's really good. And Dean Koontz, the one that's, I don't know if it's my favorite, but the one that sticks out to me the most is the very first one I read. And it was a paperback my mom had laying on a coffee table. It was called The Fun House. I don't know if you've ever read that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I read that
So
one.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's the one that comes to the top of my mind whenever anyone asks me a question about Koontz. I can always remember the cover, and I remember it scared me. That book scared me. I was a kid when I read that book.
The first Stephen King book I read was Needful Things. I was 13. Probably should not have read that at 13. But my dad had finished it, and I asked him if I could borrow it, because at the time I was reading, John Saul and or not John Saul. What is his name? Other than why can't I think of their names? The guy who did Goosebumps, what's his name? R.L. Stein.
Oh, R.L. Stein, yeah.
Before Goosebumps, in the 80s and early 90s, before he did Goosebumps, he had a bunch of other teeny bopper horrors. And then the other guy was Christopher Pike. I read a couple of his. And that's, again, when you're 9 years old, your parents aren't going to let you, at least my parents weren't going to let me read Stephen King. So
my parents were just happy I was reading. So, I picked up a copy of Carrie, and that was it. So
yeah, no, I waited. 13 is when I started. So Needful Things was my first Stephen King book, and I don't really care for it. My favorite King book is probably it. Either it or Salem's Lot. I really like a lot.
Yeah, I read it twice, and I
Same
read
here.
Salem's Lot a couple times. The Shining, I love the book more than the movie, and I don't dislike the movie, but I kind of feel the same way Stephen King does towards the movie because I read the book first. So they changed it just a little too much for my taste, and I don't know how you feel about the movie. You may be a
I
super
love
fan
it.
of The Shining.
It's one of my
You know,
top
a lot of
three.
people, yeah, a lot of people do, and like I said, I don't hate it. As a standalone movie, if I'd never read the book, I'll probably be, man, that's one of the best movies I've ever seen. But I can't separate the two in my brain.
What always amazed me is the fact that Dean Koontz, I don't feel, gets the attention that he deserves. Because
That's true.
I truly think that not only is he a serious runner-up to Stephen King as the best horror writer, in my opinion, but I almost feel like Dean Koontz's books are more entertaining because he doesn't take as much time describing things ad nauseum like Stephen King sometimes does.
Yeah, you got me there. You're right.
You know, like you'll read 40 pages of a chapter in It or in The Stand or in Needful Things about like the dress a woman's wearing and the fact that she's like trying to seduce a man and that's why she's wearing that dress and the sweat between her breasts. But then it's
Right.
like Dean Koontz will take 50 pages and he'll write like a really exciting, exhilarating scene about a monster chasing the main
Yeah.
characters. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. I'm just surprised he never really got it because I would be willing to say that I enjoy as many Dean Koontz novels as I do King.
Yeah, and you've got a great point. I'm not going to disagree with you there. One of the other things, being an avid King reader, that irritates me just a little bit are the constant callbacks. Like I forgot what you wrote 50 pages ago. You have to remind me again. So I'll get that. It's some kind of cadence he has where he has to bring something up again that you've already read. I don't know if you've seen that, but with
Well,
me,
I mean, admittingly, I the last Stephen King book I read, this will date me. The last
right?
Stephen King book I read that was brand new was Nightmares and Dreamscapes because
Oh wow,
that was
yeah,
after Insomnia, I believe. So I
that's been
read
a while.
Insomnia and Nightmares and Dreamscapes. That's like 97, maybe
Right, right,
96.
right,
And then I pretty much stopped reading for enjoyment's sake for like 15 years. I was in my 20s. I was in college. I didn't read. I was too busy
right.
drinking. And um, so then I got back into reading over the last like 2 years. I read The Outsider and I read Doctor Sleep. And I really enjoyed both of them. But other than that, I haven't read anything modern from him. Now, with Dean Koontz, same thing. I haven't read anything modern, but I read everything with Dean Koontz. I think up to like Mr. Murder was probably the
Hmm.
newest that I read of him. And the first I read was Cold Fire. My Aunt Mary let me borrow it. And because she's like, oh, if you like Stephen King, do you know who Dean Koontz is? And I was 14. I was like, I don't know who Dean
Right.
Koontz is. And she's like, here. She gave me Cold Fire and she gave me Whispers. And Whispers is amazing.
Yeah, that I was going to say that it is.
It's amazing. And my favorite Dean Koontz is Watchers, which they made a cool Corey Haim
They made a movie. Yep, I read the book and saw the movie. Yep, that's another one.
They're entirely different. The movie is great for an 80s monster movie. It's got Corey Haim, Michael Ironside.
Hmm.
So it's a great 80s horror movie. But the book Watchers is arguably that and The Relic by Doug McCammon and or whatever, and Preston Child or whatever, Lincoln
Hmm.
Child and Preston. I don't remember their names. The Relic and Watchers are probably my two favorite novels of all time.
Well, one thing you may want to go back and read by Stephen King. They did a little television series about it. It's not really horror. I mean, it has a serial killer, but
The
is
Mercedes.
the Mercedes? Yeah, the Mr. Mercedes books. Those were pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't
Um,
read those. I've heard it's a great show. So
yeah, the books are good. You know, he throws a little supernatural element in there in book two, but overall they're pretty good. So I'd
yeah,
recommend checking those out.
I just finished. I read sporadically, not enough to keep my brain active, but I read the last book I finished was Peter Straub's Ghost Story. I've always wanted to read it, and because I'm a huge fan of the movie, and so I'm sorry if we should be cutting this off. I'm sorry.
Oh,
But,
no. I was looking for this.
oh,
I had read this back in the 80s, but I'm 52 years old, so I've forgotten half the shit I've read.
totally right.
So my co-host, who's normally on here, we miss you, Elena. Tony says hello.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you both.
But she recommended this book, and I was like, hey, I read that book. She said, oh, well, do you remember this? I said, no, I don't remember anything. So I ordered a copy so I could reread it. But it's Hell House by Richard Matheson. It was released in the mid-'70s, I think. So if you've never read this, have you read this book?
I haven't. The only Richard Matheson I read was I Am Legend, which I enjoyed. And what blows my mind about Richard Matheson is that people have no idea how influential he is in terms of he did Legend of Hell House, which is which was a great Roddy McDowell.
Roddy McDowell. Yeah, two different guys.
Well, totally different guys, chewing bubblegum, kicking ass, and
that's right.
Peter Vincent. But he did Legend of Hell House. He did I Am Legend, which is Last Man on Earth, Omega Man, I Am Legend. He did What Dreams May Come of all movies. He did the book for that. He did Incredible Shrinking Man, I think, right?
I believe you're right.
Yeah, I think he did that too. So I've always been disappointed that people don't give Richard Matheson a larger, amount of credit for how much he's influenced the genre.
Right. Once you get to a certain age, like me, this is going to be like reading a new book all over again because I can't remember.
That is a new book. Look at how nice and clean and crisp that is.
It's a Goodwill book. I got it from Goodwill.
That's all. That's even better because you probably paid $4 for it.
Yeah, it was a great deal. So
yeah, I need to go and pick up a couple new ones. The book I'm currently reading is called Lucifer. It's by a fellow independent writer. His name is Russell Holbrook, and he's been a fan of mine, which was very humbling. Been a fan of mine for a long time since It's My Party. I was at the Days of the Dead in Atlanta when I met you. And Russell comes walking up to my table, and he's looking at the stuff, and he's looking at the trailers, and I'm playing all the new movie trailers, Skeletons, The Rake, High and Log. And he looks down at the table, and he sees It's My Party, and he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you directed It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To. I love that movie. I'm like, I don't know if he said he's my biggest fan, but he was like, I love that movie. And so we sat and talked for a little while and everything, and he ended up giving me a copy of his book. And so we've been emailing back and forth, and I'm like, I'm about to finish Ghost Story, so I'll read yours next. And so because I've had all my books are in boxes right now because we're in this townhouse. We thought we were going to be here for a year. We've been here for 2.5 years because our house is taking forever to build. But yeah, so I'm reading Russell Holbrook's movie. I'm going to have to let him know I gave him a shout out. He's got some pretty cool stuff, and it's called Lucifer, and it's about a cat that's like, the cat's name is Lucifer, which I think is kind of funny.
All right. Well, Tony, I had such a great time talking with you today. Everyone knows where to find your stuff now, but I'm going to say it one more time, Scotchworthy.com. Go check it out. He's got a shit ton of stuff out there. Go check it out. He's got shirts. He's got books. He's got he doesn't have books, but he has movies. And he's got a record, this cool record that I'm going to buy when I hang up with him for Skeletons in the Closet, the soundtrack. So check it out. He showed it to you. I am Charles Campbell. I'm a small town horror author. You can find me at valleyboypublications.com, Charles Campbell author on Facebook and Instagram. And my co-host isn't here, but I'm going to give her a shout out. She's JukeboxBaby78 on Instagram, and she does some fantastic special effects makeup. So we missed her tonight. I know she would want to meet you, Tony, and we definitely want to have you back on the show. I'm going to go subscribe to Bloody Disgusting and check out what you got going on there on Roku. And I'll put all the links on the YouTube page so you guys can just click on that stuff and find them. Tony's episode is going to air sometime in March. I'll post an official air date when I get it lined up, but it won't be very long. So thank you again, Tony. We appreciate you being on the show today.
I mean, the thanks are all on my end to you. I love, first of all, I haven't been on a podcast in over a year, and I sorely miss it. I absolutely love the experience of sitting and bullshitting about horror and talking to people about our movies and all the hard work that all my friends put into my movies. It's just such an awesome thing to be able to talk about that. I'd talk to you for another hour about horror movies and books if you wanted, but I just appreciate you helping get it more exposure for our work. It means a lot to everybody that worked on these movies. Thank you.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. And I will be at Days of the Dead this year, just about a month away, end of February. So I'll be there, and I'll talk you up there too while I'm there.
Thanks. I won't be there, unfortunately.
That's all right. I'll still talk you up. I might bring the vinyl with me and show people at my table. Say, hey, go order this. You want it. You want it. Look how pretty it is. But anyway, all right. Well, we had a great time. So you guys tune in, listen to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that like button and subscribe button on YouTube. And that's it for another episode of Horror 421. You guys have a great day.
We hope you had a horrific time, lovelies. Thank you for tuning in to Horror 421, the podcast. Be sure to like us on YouTube and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.